It's Steve, right?
Steve McQueen.
Steve McQueen. Steve McQueen of uh, Riding Around the Streets of San Francisco fame.
Oh, good movie.
Damn good movie, yeah.
5 seconds to start.
From now?
One,
He was in The Great Escape.
4, 5.
Welcome very much to Conversation. It's a great pleasure to welcome to the program, excuse me, Stephen James, and he is a relative of mine, and he's recently gotten in touch with me to inform me of the fact that we're relatives of a certain distant cousin relationship that he's going to help make available to me and to the viewing audience now. And he's a writer, and he's also a photographer, and we didn't get it into the graphics that are going to be displayed during this program. We want to do a somewhat extended program with the implications of what we're going to be talking about. But he's a distant or a long-lost relative of mine, and I think it's the fourth or fifth or 12th cousin or something, and he's going to make that clear, our relationship. But we're members of the same family, and we're going to be talking about all of that. And welcome, Steve, so very much to Conversations. I'm in New York, and you're, of course, in that lovely state of Vermont.
I am, and it's a pleasure to be here, Howard, and to be able to speak to you finally after knowing of your existence, but never really pinning it down.
Well, I'm going to do everything I can to make it easy for you to pin me down, everything to get, and everything like that. We're going to have a discussion of that. But for the audience and so forth, share. We're going to be talking in depth about genealogy and about DNA and about implications of getting people to know the past of their own existence and so forth, which is a huge theme, destined to become even more significant in the time ahead on a major scale. But share with us your own background. I hear a little bit of an English accent, but share where you were born and raised and a little bit of your background, and let's just wade in that way, if you wouldn't mind.
You're correct. In that I was born in London and grew up in the suburbs of London, very near to Heathrow Airport.
Yes.
In fact, if you've ever flown into Heathrow,
I have a number of times. Yes.
About 2 minutes before touchdown, you probably went over my house.
Wow, I see. Was that big one with all the lights going off and firecrackers and everything going off?
Something like that.
Would look like a very wild party or something that was going on. I trust that wasn't yours. You were down the block from there. Yeah.
Well, it was a blessing, and I was very interested in aircraft while I was growing up.
Yeah.
At the same time, I'm almost certain that the growing up in the vicinity of the airport has affected my hearing. Because
really?
I'm suffering from hearing loss now.
Yeah. From that, is that demonstrated by doctors' reports and things like that?
Absolutely, but of course it could also be loud rock music.
Yeah. Did you play in a rock band or something?
I didn't, but I listened to a lot of rock bands.
Oh, you did listen to them on the gramophone.
It's an occupational hazard of growing up in the '60s, Harold.
Yes, I know. I remember. Yeah, but did you listen to them in the to the Beatles or something in the clubs when they were playing, or just on the phonograph, or in the present?
I saw the Beatles play.
Did you really? Really?
Yes, when I was 14.
Boy, yeah.
Which would be about 1963 or 4.
Yeah.
My older sister
had
tickets to see the Beatles in a Christmas show.
That would have been a red letter ticket, wouldn't it, at the time? Yeah. They were just huge beyond belief, yeah.
This was at a converted movie theater in Finsbury Park. London, which, by the way, is very close to where your grandfather grew up.
Now, that's interesting. I had no idea where my grandfather was in terms of the past, and you've made that somewhat clear to me. We're going to discuss that. And so it's an interesting little aside you've thrown in there, but it means a great deal to me. And I'll bet that kind of information it's going to become available to endless numbers of people across the planet in the time, not too distant future time. And it's really interesting that that's now becoming available to humanity at large, on a large scale, a system scale for the whole human society. Isn't it interesting? These things are becoming available through the genome and through the reading of the DNA record. No?
Well, Harold, it's so much easier now. Also, I got interested in genealogy several years ago through my uncle, my father's brother.
Yes.
Back in the 60s and the 70s, and he spent a lot of time going to the small area of east of London in the Essex farmland.
Okay.
His parents had grown up, where my father's parents grew up, and they were all farm laborers. It was such a small area that people didn't travel in those days.
Yeah.
We're talking, 18th, 19th century.
It was
they
a whole
did not
different.
travel much, and so it's very easy to find families that have been there for many generations.
I see.
My uncle would go and visit, and then he would painstakingly go to Somerset House, which is in London, which was the repository of all the birth records.
Is that right? Okay.
The birth certificates of family members and put it all together.
Is that well put together and easily accessible to folks or not?
It's so much easier now, and I tell you why. Because my wife, in her infinite wisdom, at Christmas time, gave me a gift of a subscription to Ancestry.com.
Yes.
Now, Ancestry.com is a repository of all of birth, marriage, death records, census records from several countries: the U.S., Britain, Australia, Canada.
Now, what is Ancestry? Is that a book, or is that an encyclopedia? Is that a website, or what is that? Or is it all of that, maybe?
And with a subscription, you have access to the records which previously you had to request from the authorities. And now it's all available online.
Now, wait a second. If we let's get it straight then. The keeping of the records and things like that, I've often wondered about that, tracing it back. Somebody was keeping the records back in the year 1000 or something like that in some sort of a way, and then up into the present. But that would have been written in big tomes with pen that would get dried up, ink and thing, and it's keeping track. But it's becoming down now. Is the records keeping of the background of individuals of the human family is now becoming available to us through the use of the DNA, is it not, in a major new way?
Well, first of all, before we get to the DNA,
okay.
In Britain, for example, the census began in 1831.
The census. What was done before?
Which is accounting, literally accounting of the population.
Yeah, we had the same thing here in the States, a census taking every 10 years or something.
Every 10 years, and same in Britain. Now, the records only go as far as 1911 that are available because the government does not allow a release of the information before a reasonable time. They're trying to protect the privacy.
What was done before then? I mean, what was done? What let's say in the 10th century or something, or they have reminiscences of Robin Hood, or they had King Richard, and off to and the stuff of the literature. How has humanity been at keeping records over that long haul?
Well, you could not find records previous to that except in church records.
All right.
Churches would keep
registry birth
and deaths and marriages.
A birth record, a birth certificate was something that was probably something universally used some way or other, I guess, huh? Yeah. Okay.
So it really only changed in the Victorian era, and the census was used by the government for statistical reasons for,
Right.
for policy making, for
Right.
deciding on political districts and what have you.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
actual detail which is found within the census was protected by the government so that it would only be released after 100 years.
Why would it be so to protect the privacy or some? What's the impetus behind the protecting of the privacy of the interest of the information in our records of our collective genealogy? What
Well,
is it they're trying to protect?
I suspect it was probably a fact that there was privacy issue, and especially in America. Now, in America, the census records, you cannot get anything beyond 1940. So
Well,
I
what's
think
the impetus to
it's the
protect?
year.
What are they trying to protect with
They're
that?
protecting, for example, I found the 1930 census,
Yes.
40 census of your father,
Wow, my dad, Harold Hudson Channer, yeah.
Harry Hudson Channer, and
Yeah.
on that 1940 census, it
Uh-huh.
lists his name, his age, his address,
Uh-huh.
says what he did for a living,
Yeah.
said what his house was worth, it
Uh-huh.
said how much he earned,
Yeah.
it said how much he earned elsewhere. He had other sources of income.
Yeah.
It listed his wife,
Do you have all that information at
and all the
hand?
children and their ages.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of private information there that I suspect the advocates of, the civic advocates would not wish to see released. It's like nowadays, people do not want other Americans to know how much they earn, for example.
Well, now that's what I was
Even
getting
our
at.
president says that.
Well, we used to have the fundi in terms of the banks that were destined to become banks before there was only trade and so forth. And there were secrets. And the things that people are mostly wanting to keep the secrets are people don't want people to know about their financial situation.
Exactly.
That's
Well,
the
they-
major thing that had political implication or something, or protecting the income or the property rights of people against what? Chicanery or stealing or whatever. It was around the money issue, by and large, that the privacy issue was so important, I guess, right?
Yes, I think so. And nowadays we're all concerned with identity theft.
Yeah, what is that? Yes, okay, it's worth talking about. Yeah, right.
Everyone's online these days, and
Yeah.
you know that there are passwords for every single application, and if you don't guard that secret well, you can end up having your password stolen and your bank accounts.
There again, if I may,
all kinds of things.
yeah, okay, but again, what the major thing that people are concerned with, it seems to be, and it may be that's the major thing all of humanity is largely concerned with, is money.
Probably.
Or wealth. Or material wealth.
I think
That's
so.
the major thing.
So-
They're not worried about how you didn't sing your part right in the 5th grade pageant or something that could be embarrassing, but something that has
I think
material
also
relevance to
they
your
look at
material
something about
condition.
who they're living with.
Yeah, I think, yeah, right. It's just a thought that only occurred to me, but you're right, the privacy rights. But go on, spell it out then. But we have things.
Like your grandmother, Steve.
So-
Remember? It turned out to be a preacher. You thought it was something untoward.
Sue,
Now your wife's talking now, is that right?
Mike's talking now. She's
It's
trying to.
contributing to the thought, right?
Oh,
By all means, here she comes. Yay! The lady of the house, the voice of real authority, the one who makes sure of all the books are right, right?
For you.
Yeah, right. Good. Now introduce yourself, young lady. You look like you must be getting in close up to 30 now by now, I guess, right?
31.
31, really? I wouldn't have thought it. Yeah, right.
With 4
What do
grandchildren.
you eat, dear? What do you eat?
Not much.
Or is that a personal secret that you don't want to reveal? You know.
Oh, well, we are talking about identity theft. So
Yes. Yeah. Right. Talk
I wanted to just mention
by all means.
that when Steve was looking back to the Channer family,
Yeah.
and I believe it was who was the minister? Your great grandfather,
Henry Channer.
Henry Channer, and how was he related to Harold?
He is our mutual great grandfather.
Okay.
Wow. You see, this is really interesting. We only
So-
discovered this yesterday or something. You know. Yeah. We did.
So
Yeah.
he was looking. He was.
So
looking,
you guys are kin.
Well, I'm not, but
Oh, you're not. Well, yeah, okay, yeah, but you're connected with kin. You're connected with kin, yeah. So you're one of the gang, I guess. Yeah, okay, yeah.
yes, yes. Well, anyway, maybe you could tell the story,
I
but
will.
about
Yeah.
your mutual great
Great-grandfather.
grandfather, and Steve was trying to get some more information on him,
Yeah.
and you have to put the pieces of the puzzle together. And he was looking through we were talking about census. We were talking about census information.
Yeah.
He was looking on the census, and he was listed as living with your great grandmother in one census, and the next census he wasn't. And so,
Uh-oh.
was there something untoward? Was he living with somebody else? Were they divorced? Was he dead?
Did they go into all the details of that? That could be the thing of a real new motion picture. You could make a motion picture around those themes. In fact, I think they've made many motion pictures around that very theme. Some
Yeah.
with, you
Well,
know.
then
Yeah.
it became more apparent.
Bye, my love, bye. Yeah.
It became more apparent. Well, the interesting thing was that on each subsequent census,
Yeah.
there were more children.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
having,
more than there had been before, right?
well, right, there was
Yeah.
3, then there were 4, then there were 5 sons, and yet Henry didn't seem to be living at the same place as Martha. his wife. On a subsequent census, I discovered that he was living in a nearby village, Hertfordshire, which is just north of London,
Yeah.
and he was listed as a Baptist minister.
So
So my theory is that he was an itinerant Baptist minister.
could be, yeah, right, yeah.
Would travel around and then every now and again come home.
Yeah, get around. They could get around. To travel, that's almost like a traveling salesman.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
the interesting thing is that when I
And we know what that means. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, yeah.
Sorry, and to wrap this one up, when I
Yeah.
finally discovered his death certificate,
Yes.
technically it wasn't his death certificate, but he was listed as being a patient in a chest hospital in London in 1891.
1891. Yeah, okay, yeah.
1891, which was the year he died.
Uh-huh.
And he was suffering from a chest complaint of some kind. It didn't specify, but it gave his profession as photographer / preacher.
Creature.
And
Boy, that's pretty all-inclusive. Yes, creature. That's interesting. Character actor. Yeah, yeah.
he went around the country taking pictures of families and preaching at the same time.
Oh, preacher, not creature.
Preaching.
P
yes.
as a Oh, I thought you said creature. I was thinking that was a pretty inclusive category or nomenclature too. You know.
Preacher.
Yeah. Right.
Baptist minister, and he also took photographs in the 1880s and 90s. Now he died, listen to this, he died in 1891, and his wife died in 1894.
Yeah.
And your grandfather, who was their eldest son, was 25 at the time, immediately left England and came to America.
He came to Canada, right? First.
No, well, he did. Originally, he landed in New York in 1894.
1894. Yeah, that would have been my grandfather. Right. Yeah, I remember him. Yeah, I can remember him. Goodbye.
Make sure you talk about the war, World War II, because
war.
your family's house was bombed.
Okay, I'll get to
What?
that.
Well, what are you bringing up, war, my dear? Okay, we'll catch up with you later, young lady, and we'll go into that in some detail. Okay? Right.
Yes.
Thank you.
This
Thank
is
you.
really interesting because Charles,
Yes.
your grandfather, Charles Henry William Channer,
Yeah, that was him. Yeah.
came to New York in 1894.
Right. I think that's about
But-
right. Yeah.
But he did not enter the United States officially until the following year, 1895, when he entered via Port Huron, Michigan.
I know Port Huron well,
on the
yeah.
ferry from Sarnia, Ontario.
There you go. I know all of that. Yeah, right. That
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah. Uh-huh.
My theory is that he went to Canada because he had an uncle living there
Right.
who had emigrated to London, Ontario,
Uh-huh.
was also Charles.
Right.
He was Henry Channer, the preacher. He was the preacher's brother. And he had gone to Ontario, and there was another branch of the Channers there.
Uh-huh.
So when your grandfather came to Canada, he stayed with Uncle Charles and then went to Detroit.
That's right. He came to Detroit, and that's where. Yeah, I remember him, and then I can remember he had. There was a place out in the country at a place called Lake Orion.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember, and we had cottages there,
Yep.
and it was wonderful because he was a really for a youngster, for a 5-year-old or something. He was really something else. He was very, very effervescent and everything, and he had a great number of interests. I can remember he had a lot of what they were called. They used to have a thing you put it on and you could see three-dimensional images, and he had a lot of those images, and he was very interested in what would have been the technology at the time,
Mm-hmm.
which was changing all. And he also had a great affection for youngsters and everything, and he would put on shows in the basement, and you'd have planks and little kids, 4 or 5-year-olds,
Yeah.
and they'd be sitting there, and he would be showing what were then kind of advanced for the time.
Well, we're talking about
No, he was talking. He would be showing images of the tombs of Rome,
Mhm.
or all these kind of things. A slideshow. It would be like slideshows for the children, and he had great delight. And there were some. I remember he had some books in the attic. Attics were. Do they still have attics around out in the real world outside of New York? A place where you put all the old stuff. And he had records there that were from him. Phonograph records. And there was one I remember really well, and we played it, and it said, "This is a demonstration recording of the new Columbia talking machine." That would have been one of the early records. And he had a great sense of the of technology and things like that, and he had a great sense of humor, and got along with. I was young and everything. Got along really well with youngsters.
Yes,
A bit of a clown, a little bit of a clown too, and a little bit of a showman. He would put on the show a little bit with the kids, just to get a rise out of them or to get a laugh out of them or something. And he was a delightful. He wasn't all buttoned down. He was very much open and out with people. Yeah, really lovely fellow. Yeah.
Sounds to me, Howard,
Yeah.
it's very much like my grandfather, who was his brother.
Well, it could be. Very often it doesn't fall far
Like
from
very similar
from
thing.
what I mean. Yeah.
My grandfather loved children, and he
Yeah.
loved to tell stories and play with children. And I suspect part of that not only was his personality, but also the fact that he grew up in an orphanage.
Is that mine or yours?
My grandfather.
Your father. I don't know where. Yeah.
Well,
But it was also he would what is the term that the kids use now? Put on. There's a thing about putting somebody on, and he would put on the authority figures of the day, the presidents and that kind of stuff. He would put them on and in a sporting way or in a humorous way, and make fun of them. And he wasn't given to affectation. You know what I mean? Or
understand. And
polish.
also,
He was very, it was a delight for kids,
You have to understand, Harold, that he was 18 years older than my grandfather.
Oh, so,
Because my grandfather was the youngest of 6, and your grandfather was the oldest. So when
Oldest of how many?
he died, my grandfather was only 4 years old.
Yeah. But how old? He was the oldest of how many? My grandfather.
He was 25 when he came to America.
But you say he was the oldest of a family of how many? Was it a large? There were a lot of large families back in those days. It seems to me.
Exactly. At least 6 boys.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And the interesting thing, you mentioned that your grandfather was interested in gadgets and he had phonograph.
He was. He had all these, and he had all these interesting things for little kids. You know, for kids.
Yes, and listen
He
to
didn't
this.
have like
Was-
tomes of accounts of input and output ratios on bank accounts or something like that a lot of people who are seriously involved in the money game. I don't think he was very much involved with the thing that motivates so much of human behavior and so forth, which is money.
No,
He wasn't
and-
very interested in that. Oh, and he had
also-
at the house that he had out at Lake Orion, it was all the way down to the lake, and it was just one great big garden of flowers. He would garden and have the flowers. And it went all the way down from Bellevue Road right down to the lakeside. And then there was a dock, and it was all flowers that he had done, you know.
Yeah.
So those are some of the memories. Now he died, you know.
1945 he died.
Is that right? Yeah, Yeah, that's about right. I would have been 10.
45.
So in my youth, you know, he was a major, and the attic, we had what they call, do they still have attics in America? They have a place up on top of the house where you put all the stuff from before and everything. And there was all kinds of stuff that he had left up there that was from him. And a lot of these records from the turn of the century and everything like that. And following the interest of the technology that was developing, you know, that sort of thing. And
Yes,
particularly
I have to tell you,
communication.
The music is interesting because when he married
Lulu.
your grandmother Lulu May Hudson.
Right. She was
Where you get your name.
Yeah, right. That's
married
our middle
her-
name. Yeah.
When he married her, he gave his profession as musician.
Well, I can see where he might. He had a very thing about musician and music. I don't remember him playing anything with any perfection. I don't remember. But he was also, he would be what would be called a jolly fellow. Like a jolly fellow. Jolly. You know, he was jolly. And he would be a relationship with the children was very real. You know, he wasn't affected, I guess would be the word.
What is remarkable about this man is he was an unskilled laborer.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Came to
Yeah,
America at
but
the
he
age of
knew.
25.
But he had a
with
lot of skills.
He was married to a woman who had graduated from the University of Michigan with a medical degree.
Yeah, she broke the glass ceiling.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they had a son who became an attorney.
Yeah, he was in the class of 26 at University of Michigan, my dad.
Class of 26.
Yeah, I think it was 26. And either both or one of the Burton of the Speak, you know, the Bobby Franks trial that Clarence Darrow was so famous connected with.
Killing. Yeah.
One of them, if I remember right, it might be, it's a little loose, but he was in the class of 26. University of Michigan was where they went to university. And either one of them or both of them were in his class of 1926. And I think there were only 30 people in the class.
Yeah, there weren't
or
many.
40, something like that, very small in the law school.
Harold, this
but
is the American.
Speak, what is it?
Your grandfather lived it.
I beg your pardon?
Your grandfather lived the American dream. He
Well,
came to America with nothing.
Yeah.
And literally made something more. He reinvented himself in many ways.
I think he would have, yeah.
And became successful. And you know.
Well, I never thought, I didn't know that he was so successful. He was just a hell of a beautiful, see, I knew him as a kid. Yeah, and he was a perfect grandfather, you know, because he wasn't all stodgy and arguing over accounts and money and everything that so many people get all distracted by in terms of being responsible. You know what I mean? So he had an irresponsibility about him, like a poet or something. You know what I mean? He wasn't like an accountant.
No.
Or somebody
You
practical.
know how we,
Practical was not his middle name at all, you know.
you know how we talk about the big immigration into the United States
Right,
of
1880s and
the
that,
century, and we always talk about the Italians and the
yeah.
Irish,
Yeah, that's
the
right.
Jews.
Yeah.
There were a lot of English that came over
Of course
here.
there were,
But
yeah.
Just look at Charlie Chaplin, Stan Laurel, Cary Grant.
Yeah.
People like this that left Victorian, socially deprived Victorian England, even though they were they ran the empire and
Yeah.
industrial powerhouse. But there were a lot of poor people, and they still felt that they had to leave.
Yeah, well, I would say that I would say that coming into the change of the 19th and 20th century, the emerging power was the United States on a world scale. It had been Britain, and the empire that never said the sun set on it. They were all over the world. They had extended it. The power of the British in a temporary way. At one time it was Rome, other times it was others, and so forth. But the British had ruled the waves pretty much. That was the establishment of the time. And then the United States was destined to become more, in geopolitical terms, more powerful than Britain.
What's very interesting as a reflection of this is that in my research, I've found that 3 of my relatives on the Channa side and 1 on the James side all left England in the late 19th century, and for past is new.
Right. America was emerging. You know, they were destined to become the major power. Yeah. Which is kind of new. It had all been European based, those power, and the geopolitical realities were all, being done from European centers, and it was destined to become transmogrified over on into these shores. Yeah, right.
I think by the time of the First World War, there was definitely a shift.
Yeah, right. Anyway, that's all really very, very interesting and everything like that. And a lot of these things you're getting available to us is the ability to get in touch with these kind of reality. I thank you for putting me in touch with all of this, because I wasn't even aware. We weren't aware. People aren't as aware of their lineage, if that's right. And I think the thing, if I may, we've always had the books, and some people keeping track of things, and you could write down, and you never knew if it was really true. Somebody's writing down he was handsome or he wasn't, or whatever, in terms of the literature, Canterbury Tales, and written history. But now these things that we're talking about are beginning to be not only made available through letters and things like that, but now it's being done through science and through DNA, and through being able to know with certainty the background in scientific terms, not in terms of literature or people singing the praises of Uncle Sam or in the family, but on scientific terms. The DNA work is really amazing. That's a relatively new discovery, that we've got this ability to understand the organic process. Mm-hmm. Amazing what's coming available to us, right?
It is. It really is.
Are you backing up some of these things that you're talking from church records or something with DNA evidence of these developments that are happening in the human condition on an individual basis and so forth? Are you keeping track of the significance of the DNA, and so forth?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And you think that with the church records, for example, we will be able to research that were buried in particular churchyards.
Yes, right. We had those.
Find out what their health was like, what they suffered from, what they died from.
Yeah.
it opens up a whole panoply of
Well,
areas of human research.
well, we had those things, didn't we? The Canterbury Tales, or the things that are going back to Shakespeare's time.
Yeah.
And we had the written records, and we had some priests would write it better, and there were certain ways of keeping records, and some of that written things and that. But the DNA is of another order of magnitude. When did we get that? That's relatively recently that we're able to read the background of somebody from the DNA, from their genetic makeup.
But you know,
and it's scientific and it's accurate.
Yes, there's one thing I regret though when I'm doing this, which is it's all very dry. It's all very black and white.
What is black and white?
It doesn't really tell me what this person was like, and I'd love to be able to go back in time and talk to them.
Oh, okay, right, you are, right.
Why did you leave? Why did you leave? Your parents died and you went to America, and yet you left younger brothers who went into the orphanage. Now, how do you explain that?
Well, okay, let me extend it out a little bit, just for the hell of it. Okay, then we're just talking about something in the human condition and everything, and also we're going through a period like evolution itself. I mean, it's just interesting. The ignorance in which we've been here, as I understand, and I think it's scientifically validatable, we're a relatively new species. It's about 200,000 years ago that humanity emerged. They evolved, and they came out of Homo erectus. I thought we had come out of Homo habilis, but we're all Africans. Now we begin to know this is a common knowledge. We're all out of Africa, and we all come from a common ancestor, and the common ancestor of the Homo sapiens species was Homo erectus. And there was a moment in evolution where Homo erectus, that had been living a life in Africa in a certain in a certain environmental context and everything, and also just the state of things genetically for thousands of years and so forth. And then there was a change. And the change was called the origin of species, at least by Mr. Darwin and so forth, and that a new species appeared. And we appeared about 200,000 years ago, our species that we're all descended of. And now we have creation stories that, and in that period, we were ignorant. We were ignorant of everything. How could you know anything that was been going on? We had no way of keeping records of any notion. We could have archaeologists who could try and read the markings and that kind of thing, or assume. We got great paintings down in the south of France that showed Cro-Magnon had this. You know, all these kind of things archaeologists would be trying to paint a picture of what it was. But now we have with the DNA, that's only what, and how long have we known? It's not even 100 years or so that we've understood that there is a secret formula that is observable and measurable of the human being that can give you a scientific reading of the background of that person going back into the mists of history. Scientific, not some projected myth or tale or something that's going to celebrate one group over another, or all the givings of geopolitical competition and all those kind of things that have been characteristic of it. But this genetic thing is something that gives a scientific basis for understanding. It's an incredibly pregnant time that we live in terms of understanding the overall evolution of what we're a part of, or something. Maybe I'm going too romantic or something, but I think it's an incredible. How would you like to have been born in the 10th century? It took 200 years to invent a tack.
Yeah.
Now you come every 10 seconds there's a new tack and everything, and the pace of it's all building up to a crescendo which could be, in terms of the rest of it, the evolutionary thing we understand, a moment of punctuated equilibrium of the emerging of a new overall system that we're becoming ourselves. We're in the process of becoming something other than what we've been through the Homo sapien experience. I don't know, that's maybe what, but that's something I'm interested in. But it's a hell of an interesting time to be alive, don't you agree?
It certainly is.
I mean, I can't imagine being any other time that it could be so interesting.
And DNA not only throws a light on where we've come from,
Yes.
but it can also look forward to where we're going.
Well, yes, not only DNA, yes.
In the sense that if you understand your DNA makeup,
yes,
you know what you're more likely to suffer from in the future, what you're going to die from.
Well, that's true. That's true, because it's all contained in there. Yeah, keys to disease and so forth. Yeah, right. Yeah, but more than that, it's a reading of where you come from, right from the beginning.
And it's important to be what we are now.
You think it is beginning? Well, we made up. We had creation stories. That the God did this and they created our tribe against another one, and all these things that people had to come up with to give a sense of identity. I guess we have a need to have some sort of a sense of what's the term in the popular culture? What's it all about, Charlie? You know, what's life all about? You have these questions of curiosity and everything, but now we're getting down to where we're going to have some of these things revealed. It's just.
But I think that's what's driving my desire to
Thank you. Yeah. Why? How is it you?
My family.
Yeah.
Because I want to know.
Yeah. Okay.
Who these people were, and in a sense, how they make me what I am.
Okay, you're talking now personal about your own family line. People have been interested in that. Some people have kept records and everything, you know.
Yes, but the interesting thing, though, Harold, is that I've only really been interested in this since I had children of my own.
Right.
When I was a young man at 20, I didn't care.
You're too busy.
Didn't really want to know.
What were you? What? Let me just take a little moment here. A little cross-cultural cut through time and everything. What were you up to in your 20s that you weren't interested in important scientific questions?
Well,
did you have an eye for a skirt here and there, or a lady, or something that maybe drew your attention? Maybe.
Far be it from me.
If you didn't, you were some sort of a freak.
But I was, I had a sybaritic lifestyle.
Okay, good. Yeah, all right, right. Yeah, right, yeah.
And I like to travel, and
I
was looking for a career of some kind.
Yeah.
And the last thing I was my aged, family living in Essex or North London. So, I wasn't interested. Now, when I had my own children, I suddenly became a little bit more aware of the big human picture. And now I've got grandchildren.
Yeah.
More acute.
Yeah.
And so I really am concerned. Now, for example, you were growing up. Did you know a lot about your family history?
No, not much at all. Not really. I mean, that uncle. That grandfather of mine was probably pretty influential because he was such a jolly fellow. He wasn't like a big person. I mean, the thing is, the big people have a certain way about them. They're all guarded, and they're all counting money, and they're all got very, very narrow views of things and worrying about things and everything. And he was really kind of footloose and fancy-free, which is appealing to a 5-year-old or a 6 or a 10-year-old. I think. I'm just guessing. But he was that. Excuse me, I got a little cough. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get off on that personal thing, but he was he was of that nature. And then there are these kind of people that have been that way. But it's just amazing the success of the species. Are you optimistic or pessimistic for the human prospect, if I could ask you.
I think I have to be optimistic.
Okay.
Um,
I'm going to get a little drink. Just a second. Go ahead. Go ahead.
The journalist in me, or the cynic in me, is a little bit more pessimistic. But when I see my own son and see that what he's doing in his life, and he's raising children in a reasonably, sane manner.
Yeah.
That they're interesting, and that they're exploring their lives. I am optimistic.
Yeah, the youth can be improved. I mean, can be encouraging. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so. It's difficult when, look, for example, your grandfather's brother, my grandfather,
Yeah.
grew up in an orphanage.
Right.
He was 8 years in an orphanage. Then he joined the Navy at 17.
To see the world, yeah.
5 years in the Navy.
Uh-huh.
And came out and got married, had a couple of children.
Uh-huh.
Then there was the First World War.
Yeah, that was kind of a biggie. What a horrible. Flanders?
Yeah, he didn't
horrible.
Because he'd already served in the Navy 15 years earlier.
It was so stupid, the First World War.
Then,
I mean, it was such stupidity that we're fighting.
And then how about the Second War comes along?
Horrible again, yeah.
And, he's now got children that are grown up with their own children, and then his house is bombed.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me tell you about that.
Yes, please.
You want to hear about it?
Yeah.
My Fred, your great uncle, Frederick Victor, who was born in 1887.
Yeah.
Which is a giveaway because that was the golden jubilee of Queen Victoria.
Yeah.
So every child either was Victor or Victoria that year. Anyway, he has a house in London, in West London.
Yes.
And he's working as in a liquor store, as a grocery liquor store, and he used to take the subway to the office to the shop. And
it's the Tube in England, isn't it?
The Tube, yes, he used to.
It's called the Tube
because it was a tube, underground.
Yeah,
anyway,
but they call it the Tube rather than the subway.
So his wife.
I mean, you got to get your language here right to be in touch with the geographical reality.
Well, the Tube.
The Tube.
And Fred's wife's name was Bertha.
Yes.
And their daughter, who was my mother.
Yes.
Olive. Now, Olive had got married to my father in 1941, and he was in the Royal Navy, and he immediately was shipped off, so to speak, and served on the HMS Prince of Wales, which was a battleship. He was involved in the battle with the Bismarck in 1941.
Wow, that was one
he
big
was
boat.
seriously wounded
in
the battle with the Bismarck and taken off the ship.
Now we get, good
luck for him because the ship was later sunk by the Japanese.
Yeah.
Anyway, he spent the rest of the war in a hospital, and then he was up in Scotland. But my mother stayed in London, and she had given birth a week after D-Day to my sister, and they were living at home with her parents, Fred and Bertha.
Yeah.
And the Germans started flying V-1 bombs.
Yeah, horrible. Yeah.
Over London.
Yeah.
And they were called doodlebugs.
The Blitz, yeah.
No, it wasn't the Blitz. The Blitz was the actual bombing in the 40s.
Oh, that's what I was thinking. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's what I got confused.
In the later part of the war, 44, 45, they had developed the rockets.
Yeah.
And they were firing these rockets over to London. And this one, the doodlebugs, people used to say, as long as you can hear it, you're okay.
Right.
The engine cuts out.
It's when it stops, that's when you have to watch out, yeah.
Yeah, they were like drones.
Down in the tube tunnels, hiding.
This drone dropped on my grandparents' street. And my mother, who was on the toilet when it happened, was blown downstairs. And her mother, and she ran into the kitchen. To see if her mother was okay, and her mother, you're going to get this, is a good line, it's a journalist line. Her mother, Bertha, had been bottling beets
Beets,
Beets.
like the vegetable beets.
Yeah, she was
Red,
bottling
yeah,
beets. So
yeah,
Bertha was bottling beets
yes,
when this V1 blew up, this bomb blew up.
yes.
There was beet juice all over the kitchen walls. And my mother freaked out.
I don't wonder. You think it's blood for one
She
thing.
thought she'd been
Yeah.
blown to bits.
Yeah,
But she
yeah.
wasn't.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
not only that, but my grandmother had saved the life of my baby sister, who was only 10 days old,
Oh wow, little infant, yeah.
by cradling her
Yeah.
as the blast blew in the French
As
windows.
as
And
the beet,
glass
as the beet,
showered her.
as the beet juice went all over the walls, yeah. And that could am I right in saying that was connected with the thought it was blood?
She thought it was blood all
Yeah,
over
she
the
did. She really did. Yeah, I wanted to
Beet
make that
juice.
point clear. Yeah, right.
There were
Yeah.
11 people were killed on the street.
Oh, sorry.
And my family survived.
Yeah.
Now, imagine going through that. You know?
Well, yeah, and I mean, think of
the human spirit.
one of my favorite lines. I use it all the time. Poor Rose Josiane, my producer, would be sick of hearing it, and other people who watch my programs and everything. It's James Joyce. He had Daedalus say, "History is a nightmare," and one could add of injustice. In terms of where we're going, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
From which I'm attempting to awaken. And the question is, are we coming to a new phase of history that has a promise of a fulfilled way that is almost comparable to the process of punctuated equilibrium in evolution, where you're coming to not just a quantitative change, but a qualitative, across the boards, almost like punctuated equilibrium, qualitative transformation in the condition of the whole Megillah, including humanity and all the rest of the environment and so forth, that you're coming to a time, because we went through those things, all those periods from 200,000 years ago. And there were periods of great strife. There were periods, I can't help thinking, people disagree or think about it, like people wandering around on the Serengeti plain, living on carrion, or something that might be left over from or we were prey, humanity, in the early stages, a couple 100,000 years ago. It's almost certain for most of our archaeologists that we were prey, by and large, more than preyer upon other creatures or other forces or sources of food or something, by the big cats. They could run us down with alarming regularity. It was probably very, very grim. I may be wrong, but it seems to me it was very, very grim compared to what it was to become, say now. Do you have a hot shower and a hot bath and everything available to you, and all the creature comforts are there, and we can now take care of everybody, larger populations in a way. More and more people are getting into a status materially in the world of being what is called a have than a have not. Mm-hmm. But most of the period, for most of the people, they were decidedly have nots in terms of the overall. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? That history was a nightmare from which we are attempting to awaken. Well, not a lovely picture of some idyllic past, but a nightmare of depravity. Not depravity among people, but a lack of the material comforts or conveniences or understandings or education or anything that makes up the wolf of civilization. And then it comes down to a question in our time: are we in a time of qualitative transformation that we happen to be born into, or are we just part of a historical pattern that continues from the past? That's a question I think that we're being confronted with at our time. We couldn't, if I may, I don't want to run this thing down into the thing, but we were impotent at the level of we've been fighting wars in order to geopolitically decide which gang has the ability to pursue their leadership role in a realpolitik sense. Whoever's got the biggest gun can conquer the other and rule and win because they have the ability to assert their power, whether it's just military or economic or whatever. And so you had Rome, and then you had all these other, that kind of thing. But the ability to do that based upon material military prowess has reached a point now where, if I'm not mistaken, it'd be something. Let's collectively try and run it down. You and I, maybe we're going to get together and become friends to collectively find out from our understanding whether the weapons that exist collectively in the human society, which we have used to high advantage throughout the whole period to give advantage to one tribe over another so they could win over the other. If the weapons, if they were to be unleashed, that do exist, would mean the end of our species. Not just the end of the other tribe, or that we would win and they would lose, but it would mean, if it was an all-out, that it exists as a capability that it never did. We were impotent, we were protected in our impotence at being able to kill each other, but we still demonstrate a thirst for being able to assert ourselves in a military way in order to assert power over others and so forth in a way. And collectively, that capability is now species lethal. Do you think that's true, or is it not worthy to consider?
Oh, I certainly agree with you that the risk of thermonuclear destruction is
and others too, other things.
It's been raised again in the last year here.
But we couldn't do that. If I may, we remember the Second World War. We were impotent at the level of species. We couldn't do it no matter how hard we tried. We're trying to kill ourselves. Yeah. But
Absolutely.
Now it's different, apparently, from the modeling. It's now the whole species goes.
Absolutely. And that is very pessimistic thought.
Yeah, but on the other hand,
also the evolution, the humankind. First of all, there are so many more people in the world now,
that's
and
true.
It's continuing to grow.
Yes, that's true.
Natural resources are receding. Food, how are we going to feed 7-8 billion people?
Well,
climate change is another huge issue. I think maybe humankind is, in a way, shooting itself in the foot.
Well, but you see, we've been shooting ourselves in the foot over a long history. 200,000 years, a pretty long run for this show. But now we're getting down to where the final act may be coming. And on the other side, it may be that we have a capability of taking care of everybody to where nobody has to be a loser. Everybody could be taken care of within good design that's also equally available to us, the same as with the destructive capability. And we may be a time of emerging in a new way, positively, at the time that we were born into. One of the problems in this television game that I'm involved with is time. We've run out of time, Steve, for this program. So what I'm going to have to do is say goodbye to the audience and to you, and we're going to do another program. We're going to pursue this, okay? We're going to run this thing down on another program. But thank you. Sorry to have introduced that, but we'll take another. We're going to tape another program to follow this one, if that's okay with you.
Okay.
Okay. So strike the set, strike up the band, give it a little break, and we're going to be coming back with Steve James, freelance writer, photographer, and genetic tracer extraordinaire. Okay. Thanks, Steve. Look forward to coming back next time. Thank you for viewing. We'll be coming back next time, and so please do thank you for viewing, and we'll see you next time.